Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Class 1A podcast. Today we are diving in deep into episode 4 of My Hero Academia season 6, and it is being phenomenal as always. We start to see Shigaraki finally being awakened, more amazing animation and fight scenes between all of the heroes and the Nomus, and a little bit kind of a lore drop or tease of an upcoming lore drop between Dobby and Twice. Not Dobby and Twice, I'm sorry, Dobby and Hawks. I'm still so sad about Twice's. But my name is Andrew. I'm with James Graham. Before we jump into the recap really quickly, what are your thoughts on the episode? Is it still rocking and rolling like the first three? Are we slowing down? Are you still hyped?
I think we're slowing down a bit, but I think it's a bit of a necessary slowdown. Like we are getting a bit more lore heavy kind of moments and stuff like that, like with Hawks and Dobby and all the lore background on like Shigaraki and stuff like that. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad slowdown. I think it's a very cadenced one. You can't just have every episode be a complete like gong show every time, right? So where there's still a ton of fighting, there's still a ton of information being given. I think it's delivered in the proper manner.
Yeah, and I think the first three episodes have been absolutely amazing, and I'm not taking anything away from this. Like, we literally have a note later on to talk about the animation and the fighting in this one, because it's still so good. It's still such a step above everything else the last couple of seasons. But again, this is one of the best seasons of animes I've ever been a fan of, just between all the other shows. And My Hero Academia is also reaching the highest bar like ever in terms of the show, because I know the rankings don't mean everything, but it's like the number 3 show of the season, and that's a really stacked lineup to be where it is, with the other two being Bleach returning after 20 years, and then Chainsaw Man, one of the most anticipated anime in years. So it being number 3 really goes to show how amazing My Hero Academia season 6 has been so far.
Yeah.
With that thought, let's jump into the quick recap so we can start talking about the actual episode. But it pretty much starts off with learning a little bit about kind of Tokiyami talking a little bit about weaknesses and Hawks and just kind of the character overall. And we learned that Hawks sees his one weakness as fire, which coincidentally is not a good thing as he's currently squared up against Dobby. Hawks is still very confused about who exactly Dobby is, and it seems that Dobby reveals his real identity to Hawks in the moment, which kind of stun locks him. And overall, there's just kind of a lore drop about Dobby's goals, how he doesn't really care about anyone else around him, of how one man's obsession can change things. So clearly Dobby has something really big coming that he's teasing very heavily to Hawks, and if Hawks is going to live to see it, we'll have to wait another episode. But going back underground where the remainder of the episode is, we pretty much see that it is continuing to be Mirko fighting off multiple high ends at once, but this episode is not going as well. Endeavor does show up along with a bunch of other pro heroes, including Aizawa and Mike, and the fighting pretty much continue on throughout the rest of the episode, with the Nomu seeming to become smarter and stronger as they begin to wake up. We got a little bit of tease of that last episode where it said it took about 8 to 10 hours for high end to actually get up to the level of where he was at. So now with this being almost 30 minutes now, or however long it's been, they're definitely starting to get smarter, and we see that throughout a couple moments in the episode. But could we continue to be, the big goal is to stop Shigaraki from waking up, and it seems like Mirko is able to do so after smashing into his tube several times despite being attacked by a Hell High End. We do see Shigaraki's tube finally break and him fall to the ground. But as the doctor is being taken away and Shigaraki's on the ground, presumably dead, we get kind of an internal dream of Shigaraki's where it pretty much is him casting away his old life officially, his family, saying he doesn't care about any of all that more, and walking through /to All for One. The doctor does say that Shigaraki officially has the original All for One quirk, and after an electrical cord shocks the water around Shigaraki, he is awakened and death is coming. I don't know any better way to say that except for I would not want to be X-Fire or whatever the man is standing 3 inches from him right now.
Man, poor X-Less, he's just like I hate to say it, but when you see these characters introduced, you just know they're gonna get it. You know what I mean? Because he's definitely like a B or like C, like maybe A actually, because he's on the assault, and I mean his quirk seems kind of decent, right? Like I mean he shoots, he's like a half Cyclops kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
yeah, so like I mean he definitely seems like an all right like hero, but like yeah, he's I hate to say it, but our boy's fodder for sure.
Yeah, but like when Shigaraki's on the ground, X-Fire, X-Less or whatever, I was looking at him, I'm like, come on, Special Forces, two to the head, one to the chest. Like, just put it out of the misery. Like, this is the entire reason you guys came here, is to stop this man. Why are we even debating leaving this dude in one piece? Like, I know that's not what My Hero is, but like, come on, we're at literal war right now. Let's take it up a step. So him just kind of standing there, just continuing to check his pulse for 5 minutes is like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, let's get Aizawa on top of him. Let's do something here. But nah, we're just gonna let him sit there. So that was not the brightest moments of the heroes, and we continue to actually see how cocky and confident all the leader room. We see a lot of those like kind of military looking guys all smirking after saying we have them surrounded. We took out all the exits. Like, definitely a little bit too cocky on the hero side. And now with Shigaraki awake, we saw Gigamachia, Gigatamachi, whatever the actual name is.
We're gonna call him Machia. We're calling him Machia.
Looking at the radio, it's all coming down, right?
Yeah. There's too much foreshadowing, right? Like you can't put that much stuff in and be like, oh yeah, no, it's all gonna end hunky dory. You know what I mean? Like, tropes are there for a reason, and they are very much living up to them right now.
And also, this can't go too fast. Like, this is the villain group of My Hero Academia. I mean, we kind of had to know that. Like, we all knew this wasn't the final season. So if we were about to take out their entire giant army, Shigaraki was going to be defeated, twice as dead now. Like, if all that was going to happen in 5 episodes, something was going to be wrong. So this was kind of coming if you had any kind of common sense in terms of story.
Yeah, exactly right. You definitely don't need to be a manga reader to know like what typical like death bells kind of look like and stuff like that, or like a lot of these are like very very used things in cinema and film and everything like that. Like, I mean, this isn't new, but I do like that they are doing it in a way that builds that anxiety, you know what I mean, that you know that these things are being deliberately put in, and you know something like the inverse is coming, but you don't entirely know what it looks like. Maybe you do now with this episode, because Shigaraki just got the equivalent of a shock, like a CPR shock. He just got AED'd, so I don't know what that means. Like, I mean, I guess that means now, like, we assume he's just gonna wake up and cause havoc, but like, what does that look like? What does that look like in his new form?
And we've seen Deku twice in the first 4 episodes, which is incredible. A show that's never gone away from Deku for like more than like 3 or 4 episodes, which was last season, from My Villain Academia, to really give him no moment, no nothing in the first 4 episodes. I love it. I love seeing so many other characters, especially Mirko. I just kind of we can just kind of move talking into a little bit about kind of Mirko, that fighting the animation there, because I think that's something you called out, but she's looked incredible. There's so many heroes that have kind of gotten chances to shine that aren't Deku, and I love that. Despite being a main character guy, every animation moment has felt great, and I'm just loving all of that.
Yeah, I think I think it was a really good job on like both the studio and like how they were presenting Mirko, because everybody knew she was such a fan favorite, right? Like, as soon as she was introduced in the manga, I mean, Mirko has been like the pinnacle of like badass hero, because she is like, and she lives up to it when they've animated her, and they haven't spared budget on her, which I think is great, because I think you need to, given how she makes her quirk effective. She's basically a Beyblade 90% of the time, and you can't cut, like, you can't beat around the bush on that, or if you do, you're just gonna get roasted, right? So I'm very glad to see that they've kept the budget up. They've kept the frames like very very high with her. Like, it's great, and like, they continue to make her look exceptional. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I just can't wait to see more. Obviously, looks like she's in Best for Roast spot, so I don't know how much more of her we'll be seeing, but it does kind of feel like, okay, this first like little arc within the fight is over. The race against the clock to stop Shigaraki apparently didn't work, so now we're going to kind of be moving into phase 2, which could mean more heroes getting a chance to shine, and maybe now that the other battlefield will start seeing it, we could probably have Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki coming in. So like, we've had the amazing moments with Mirko, Endeavor, Aizawa, and now it's going to move on to the next stage in the next cast, which I love that. That's how they just keep doing it. Of like, every couple of episodes, this big battle's over, and we move on to the next one. That's super fun. I think I love the introduction and pure amount of heroes.
Yeah, like, you do really get to see like the whole cast, and like really how big Hero Society is in Japan. Like they have the sheer numbers and stuff like that. I think it's really cool because like I mean we've been stuck with the same kind of roster for so long, right? So to kind of build out, and even if it is like like I mean in the case of like XLS and stuff like that, like you do have some characters that are definitely there to serve like they're a plot point, right? They're fodder, right? But regardless, it's still like it still puts them into existence. Like we haven't seen Crust really at all, and we know he's he's in the top echelons of
he's
heroes.
number 6.
Summer 6, yeah. So and he is going toe to toe with some of the Nomus too, right? Which so it's cool. It's cool. Like I'm very happy that they're doing this, right? So I think this was needed. This was needed to like really make it feel as vast as it's supposed to be.
Let's talk Nomos too. Between Nomu starting to get stronger. So Mirko's no longer able to take them on. But originally she was pretty much able to fight all of them off by herself, and now there's a whole cast of heroes with no new Nomus dying, and we know they're getting smarter and stronger by the chance. And now that Shigaraki's awake, do we think everyone just underground dies now? Like between that combination, like do we start to think we see like obviously XLS is gonna be dead? Like, do we think Mirko makes it out? Do we think Endeavor, Aizawa, like or like just seriously injured and out for a while or possibly have to retire? Like, what are their chances of getting out between those two forces?
Yeah, that's just it. I kind of want to just go with the last point you made, which is very My Hero-esque, and I think we're 6 seasons deep. We know how the typical play is, and a lot of these like Endeavor, Aizawa, Mike, like I think the way they go with those characters is so injured that they have to retire. I can see that being the move for each one of them. Sure, maybe they kill off somebody, but like with those characters who have been around so long, like it has major implications if they do decide to kill somebody off. Like, and I think it would be pretty gutsy to kill off Mirko when you do just dedicate like the first basically 4 episodes to her. Like,
yeah.
Like I mean last episode debatably not hers, but like yeah, it's I think we're gonna see like mortally wounded, not quite dead, but on the brink of. Maybe somebody other than XLS bites it, but I think that's about it.
Yeah, I'd just be interested to see how they make that happen, because it does seem like they're literally trapped in their own tomb right now, is how it appears. They cannot defeat the Nomus, despite the number 1 hero being there, the number 6 hero being there, and I think Mirko's like the number 8. Like you have 3 of the top 10 heroes there.
She's higher up, isn't she? I thought she was like 5.
Oh, is she? I don't know. I know she's in the top 10. That's all I know. I forget exactly what number. Maybe crossed his floor down then. But like with those ones not being able to stop it before Shigaraki woke up, like they just have to do that in a way where it's kind of believable, of where maybe they could try to just run away and escape, but again, why won't they follow them? So that's the one thing that I want to at least be done well, that if they're not going to, I agree, they're not going to kill them off. I love bringing that up. They're not going to, but if they don't seriously like knock them out or cover them in rubble for them to be discovered 2 days later, like they better at least do it in a good way where it makes sense for them to not just go and join the other fight. Like you guys should be dead here, but instead of you to go fight and make a big moment save it later on, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I think that execution has to be done right. Again, just so it doesn't feel too like, I don't want to say like too shonen-y, like, but like you got to make the stakes feel real, right? So, but I love the fact that like, because that's what I was worried about initially, of them just talking about how the Nomus aren't totally developed and they're just kind of like they're just kind of bumbling along and trying to adapt. But we actually get an entire sequence of a Nomu adapting, which I thought was really cool, because we don't
love that.
Because we haven't really gotten it otherwise. But it's the female Nomu just basically like picking apart Aizawa's quirk and figuring out how it works, right? I think it's good. I think it builds it out a bit more, so you don't have to think how the thought process is. You actually get to see it, which is great.
Yeah, the Nomus are terrifying. I love the introduction of the high end, because kind of just the cannon fodder. Like they didn't even show them really after the very first episode of them even really fighting any of the original like kind of low ends and mid end tiers. Like I love it only being high ends instead of having mass numbers. Let's just have these incredibly intelligent ones, which lead to better fights, better moments. Like obviously the one that got Mirko at the very last second. Like you don't get that with a kind of a mid end Nomu, because they don't have those kind of quirks, those kind of powers. But they did that. It was able to do a kind of a cool voice line and continue to fight. Like I love a lot of that kind of stuff too, which makes them feel more like a villain rather than just like the on the ground grunts. Like getting Okra's grunts is what they always felt like before this fight.
Well, that was just it. It was like ever since after the like I think the first major one that fought All Might and stuff like that. Like yeah, their like lethality it felt really reduced, right? It felt like they weren't as scary as they should have been. And this really just instills that you're like, oh shit, these are like, you know, real contenders. Plus they have multiple quirks. They all have like multiple quirks in them, which I again is really cool. So and they're all very unique. Like I mean, no, like Mirko did take out one, like she just like straight up decapitated him. But like the other ones, like yeah, you get the regeneration, you get that crazy like hair thing. Like they're super sick. I'm so happy that they've gotten like that restored limelight.
Yeah, but I think obviously Shigaraki I want to save for last. So the other thing I want to move to before talking about him is just Hawks and Dobby a little bit. It's going back to the beginning of the episode, but obviously Hawks is in an incredibly bad situation. But what do you kind of think about more about Dobby and him having some secret identity that Hawks clearly knows who he actually is, and that seemed to be kind of a big moment there, even though we didn't hear it yet. And then just also Dobby clearly having his own goals and not giving a shit about anything else, which we kind of already knew. Like
I think it was something we definitely suspected already, mainly because he like, and I think I even said it like last episode, like Dobby was very much, he wasn't on level with Shigaraki, but he was always off doing his own thing and nobody really questioned it. So I think we kind of saw that coming for a while, but it is nice just to have it actually like kind of like spelled out to us, I guess. But yeah, you like, what's his agenda? Like I know he talked about Stain and stuff like that, but like a combination between his actual motives and who the fuck he actually is, because like that's the other thing. He knows who Hawks is. No one's supposed to know who Hawks is, right? And it's just like I mean, like it just added layers to Dobby out of nowhere. Just like we always suspected what was going on with him. And like, you know, the fire and stuff like that, we all had our own headcanon. But this just added layers to what was thought a fleshed out character, right? So I think that's really sick. I'm actually kind of curious how Hawks gets out of this, because he's against his one weakness. I mean, it would kind of, this does feel My Hero-y if they do kill off Hawks because of this. You had an entire monologue about him at the beginning from Tokoyami, talks about his one weakness, is squared up against his one weakness, just killed a villain, you know what I mean? So I think if you were to kill off a hero right now, it would be applicable that it was Hawks, you know what I mean? Do I think they're gonna do it? Like maybe. I think it would be real ballsy. I think it'd be real ballsy if they did.
It would be. I'd love it, but they won't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it will be interesting again. I want to see how he gets out of that, whether it's Dobby's. Because Dobby says, I don't care if you live or die. Like, I don't think Dobby, like, obviously there's still fire literally burning on his back right now. So clearly Dobby isn't letting up, but it's just interesting. I think that might kind of be one of where Dobby clearly has something else is planning to do here. So I think we figure out what that is pretty quickly now. Maybe with Shigaraki waking up and might force his plan to come out quicker, but Dobby's planning something. And they're spending way too much time about who Dobby is, about what he wants, to not give us that reveal pretty quickly. So it'll be curious, and I think that's when we'll talk a lot about Dobby whenever that happens.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let's move on to the other half of the villain side, into Shigaraki. I think there's kind of two things here a couple things we learned out here. So I think I'll kind of list them off, and you go wherever you want off of that. So one, we learned, like, you kind of got that flashback vision of him just kind of fully casting off his original self and going over to kind of the All for One side, in that kind of the flashback dream. And then two, this whole idea of copying quirks, who has the original, who has duplicates, and all that kind of stuff, and confirming that Shigaraki is the official holder of the original All for One quirk right now. That there is a duplicate that the original All for One still has, but that Shigaraki is the true successor, very much in the light that Deku is the true successor as well now. So whichever one of those you want to go off first, go wild.
I want to talk about the fact that the first edition is far more valuable than any reprint that we get. That's basically what I think they're trying to hammer home, is that the non-duplicated quirk is much more, like, I'd assume is much more powerful than the duplicated one, right? So I think that's a really interesting thing to bring up, because you always got to wonder, like, in what capacity is it more powerful? Like, I guess in All for One's case, are the quirks more potent? Are they stronger? How the fuck does that work? So that's more like hypotheticals that I want to pose. But the fact that we're seeing him basically cast aside his humanity, I think is really crazy. We had a sequence of him not just becoming like a villain with like a kind of like a messed up past, but we're seeing him turn into like absolute evil, right? Like I think that's what that walkway was, of him walking away from everybody trying to hold on to who he used to be, and he's becoming who he wants to be, or who the goal was, sort of thing, right? So I think that's nuts. Like I think that's super scary for the heroes, because now you have somebody who's basically untethered. I think that's really what that whole scene was trying to relay, right? So
yeah, and they're just they've changed the whole quirk game so much in the first 4 episodes.
yeah,
Talked about transferring quirks without All for One's power, which is the only way we knew about it before. How that can be done. We've now have duplicating quirks. We have two people with ideally the same quirk, even though there's different power levels to it possibly. Like we've always made fun of kind of Horikoshi in a way of he never explains anything, because then it starts causing loopholes. But now he's adding so many more depths to one, maybe making it so that it's easier not to explain things like, oh, they just have duplicates, or to maybe start explaining more things down the road. Like it's very interesting of where we have never talked much about how quirks work, how they're transferred, anything like that. And now in 3 episodes, we've gotten a ton of it. Obviously, it's very relevant to explain how Shigaraki has the quirk now, because we've only ever seen All for One take. I guess he could always give quirks.
he could give quirks. Yeah,
I just don't know why this is all being brought in. I like it, but
Yeah.
it's just interesting.
Yeah, Horikoshi opened Pandora's box with this, for sure. I think he really did. Like, as soon as we got to the point of being able to harvest quirks and like manifest them in like a laboratory, that's when things got crazy.
Yeah, so again, I'm interested in where all this goes, or maybe it was all just a setup so that the high ends could be explained and that Shigaraki can be explained. And now that that's done, maybe we will never talk about quirks again. I can see that absolutely happening. So it'll be interesting. I think he's only at 77% or whatever we saw. So I think next episode will probably be the last episode where that's kind of dove into. I think as he wakes up, he'll probably talk to the doctor for a little bit about what's going on, or the doctoral monologue about what's
I think
happening.
It'll be more of that.
And then I think we go from there.
Yeah, because I think that was really good that we had that very believable monologue out of the doctor, sort of thing, because he has a connection to Mike. He has a connection to Mike, and he uses that to his advantage, which I think was really cool. Also, I do like the fact that Mike got some love this episode. I feel like he's always been such a sidebar character, and you don't really get to see him use his quirk that much, but his quirk is sick, right? So, but yeah, no, it was really nice having that monologue that, again, explained a lot of things. And I think that's probably how we're going to get most of our information delivered, because Shigaraki's not really a big talker as far as like fleshing out stuff.
Yeah. So I love how Mike was saying he was just disgusted to touch him and stuff, kind of like that. Like I did love seeing Mike kind of get that, and I'm sure he's still down there. Again, we have to see how all this gets wrapped up next episode, because they're still underground with probably 2 of like the most deadly forces in all of My Hero Academia. So with that, I kind of want to move over to just doing the Plus Ultra for the one. I think it'll be interesting. We just have 2 of us, so let's just say Dylan would have picked Mirko, because let's be honest, he probably would have. But I'm curious who you think went Plus Ultra this episode.
God, I kind of got to agree with that. You know what I mean? Like I mean, I think this episode was very split as far as attention and stuff like that. But at the same time, like Mirko's the one that made sure he didn't get to 100%. She's the sole reason of that. Who knows what that looks like? But she got him to 74, and she made that stop. So I think she deserves it. But again, this one is one of those ones that's very wishy-washy, and there's no real better person. I'd say Aizawa and Mike are kind of coming up behind there. Aizawa especially, because he's one of the main reasons the Nomus are being fended off. But I think Mirko ultimately gets it.
Yeah, I mean, Mirko literally almost lost 3 more limbs this episode and still completed her goal. I mean, I think she's done for the fight, so this is probably the last one we'll give her. But she literally fought through everything, still destroying the tube while having 2 giant spikes through her body. I think that's pretty badass. Pretty much the definition of Plus Ultra. So I'd have to agree, and we'll let Dylan actually make his vote next week. But we'll just assume that it's going to be a clean sweep this week. But That is going to be all for this week's episode of the Class 1A podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. Go over to youtube.com/Class1A to stay up to date with everything that we're doing. My Hero, we're doing Blue Lock, we're doing Demon Slayer. We have all kinds of stuff over there. But thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.